Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway, and I'm beyond delighted to have Rebecca Rose back with me. It's it's been a while between videos, so I'm so grateful that Rebecca would come here and join me. This video, just to kind of reference point, is something that we have been having conversations in the background to talk about that we felt really important to bring this information onto a video. Rebecca, through her work and through my work, we have a very unique perspective in what we're about to talk about. And I feel like the timing of it in terms of what so many individuals are going through and what we're going through as a collective experience is kind of crucial right now. So as a disclaimer, we're going to be talking about some pretty triggering and dark and heavy topics, but for a purpose, to bring light to it so that we can identify, see what has been hidden, what has been, well, basically an unraveling, revealing of what I think is one of the most important topics, part of this like grand shift of consciousness that we're going through right now. So we'll be covering topics around pornography, sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, SSP programs, mind control, and why that is and how do we heal from it. So Rebecca,
Yeah, wow.
welcome.
That was just such a big, the topically so large, right? Like, wow. And it makes me feel like off the bat, as you were speaking, I'm like, wow, I have really made a tremendous journey in my own healing over the years, recent years, really, so that I can like give voice to this in a way where I'm not, falling apart. So, as I speak about my own experience, because it can be triggering for people, and even we who speak publicly about our experience in the programs and elsewhere, and just in physical human embodiment, it can be challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it's a taboo, right? Like this, what we're about to talk about is like massively taboo.
Massively taboo. And yet all this stuff is like running the culture, but we don't, it's in the shadow. It's in the shadow. It's in the shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I when we first talked about doing this video, we were in Scorpio season and we were talking like, "Oh, this is very Scorpionic." We're now like recording this just out the other side of Scorpio season, but I think the energy is still very pertinent. And I've seen that through, well, I've been seeing it building for months. And to be honest, even for years, I knew that when we get to like this, I don't even know the words, we get to like the nitty gritty of this awakening, like this is the stuff that has to rise to the surface. And I kind of like been talking about it. I've been dancing around it. Like I've done videos where I'll just like, but now I'm like, oh, I think we've got to go all in. um, I think it's,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful that I can't think of a better person to come on and have this conversation based on your own personal experience. And
Oh, thank you. And I really hope I can do it justice. It feels like something that could be, it's like bigger than I am, or bigger than, it's so large. It's that, yeah, the machination through which, I call it the sexual grooming of our whole world, really, in a way.
well,
Which is, when you talk about it like that, it feels quite massive. So, but we're here just giving voice to what we can today,
yeah,
and
yeah,
inspiring other people to maybe look deeper in, and also, you know, I know lots of people through client sessions and so on. For, I think, for both of us, we can see the amount of sexual abuse and sexual distortion that's gone on for clients.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the way that I see it is like, I guess my personal why is like when I look around at my own journey, which is slightly different. I don't think that's necessary right now, but there'll be a time where I share a bit more.
Hmm.
But when I look around and I look at all the people that I love the most and how they've all been impacted to some level by the, well, actually, as a society as a whole. But I think where I get really personal around it is I look at the people who I love the most and how
Hmm.
they've been victimized in some way and how that has created these repetitious patterns of in slavery and distortion and unconsciousness and
Yeah.
and that is something that is dear to my heart because I want everyone to be able to break through that and come back into their purest light and essence and utilize their own sexual energy, their creative life force energy in the way that was always intended to.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, so well, you mentioned relationship, and something happened for me, catalyzed within this last, just in the last month. I was dating somebody who revealed to me a few weeks in that he was addicted to pornography and was really having a hard time getting away from it. And I was like, well, how long has that been going on? He said, oh, 15 years. And I said, oh, okay, this is pernicious, and and this is, nothing in here is meant to like, if you use porn, or if you're a porn addict watching this, I mean, I see porn addicts as clients. It's pervasive, and this isn't meant to degrade anybody who's using porn in a way that doesn't feel good to them. So just want to clarify that. But it brought me front and center into the personal, very, very personal story I have with being used in pornography as a child, and a subject that I think for a long time I couldn't quite, and see it even now, I think it's difficult to look at it without some layer of denial, and I think for me, I noticed that there will be continual catalysts in my life, for this issue, and others, where if I haven't finished the work, there's going to be an external catalyst. Like, so this man walks in and is like, hey, so it's a porn story. Oh, and then for a while I was teaching meditation in prison, and somebody I was mentoring for a long time, I finally figured out what his criminal background was, and he had 11 felonies connected to child pornography. And this was somebody I was helping to, to mend his life. And for the record too, I would say, I don't think anybody's beyond redemption. We all have a light, and a lot of addiction stems from trauma, and see that in my own family. And you, I'm sure, see this in people you work with, and people who are closer into your life. That's a trauma response. So, as this psychotherapist and amazing healer, Gabor Matai, would say, it's not what happened to you, or excuse me, it's not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you, which I think is a more pertinent question maybe for our whole world. So anyway, the story of like my own sexual abuse, like some of it is so gnarly that it's hard to be with. Even though I've healed a lot, I'm aware that there's still ways that I have, in some measure, sort of sidestep the journey by dissociating a little bit. Like I guess I could give a quick background, and this leads into program abuse in the programs too, the SSP, which we'll talk about. But my godfather was working for this deep state, just like my father. They were best friends, working for a company that would be bought out by Lockheed Martin. This was back in the 70s. And my godfather owned me. He was a handler from the time I was born till the time I was 6 or 7. And I have profoundly gritty, really dark memories of him taking me to these, like, I remember it felt in my memory like being in a basement, and there's other kids there, there's lots of men there, and we're being used as a what better way to blackmail somebody in the deep state than by filming them having sex with a child. And that's what I was used in repeatedly during those years. My most clearest memories are from about age 4. And I later in my teens was having nightmares about repeated nightmares about being in a room in which there's Polaroids floor to ceiling, wall to wall, that are all me as a child. It's all pornographic. It's me. And I was in therapy for this for a while. I was very I was institutionalized because I was suicidal during that time. But it's profoundly affected my life to have been used in that way. And this is just a little piece of my puzzle. But I guess point being is like, the porn story touches our world personally in so many ways, or maybe you have a partner who's addicted to porn and are not sure what to do, or maybe like I said earlier, maybe you're struggling with porn addiction. What is the story of porn in our world? How did it get this way, right? So just pausing with that. Yeah.
There's 2 avenues that I feel I want to go down, and I'll let you choose. One is what the porn industry does and how the
Yes.
energies that work through it, and how the children who are being abused and the energy, and then the people that watch it, and how it creates this virus.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
and how the siphoning of energy that can happen, this can be very triggering for people. But if you're very sensitive to energy and you are exposed to pornography, you can feel the energy that is beaming through the screen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the looping of addiction, is from what I've seen through people who I'm very close to, and what I've been shown in visions and dreams and sessions.
Yeah.
That's one. And then I want to go into like the SSP and how they use children in different. So
Yeah, so we can dive into that first bit. Yes, the energetic feeding, and I mean, I don't know, are people maybe kind of aware of this? Your audience is pretty savvy, and I've observed the same thing psychically with, I mean, I was shown very graphic images of what's going on with, a man becoming aroused with porn, and where's his sexual energy going at that moment? And that is a deep victimhood in a way. I mean, even though we're all responsible for what we're doing with our attention, they're preying upon male energy in a way, and very much distorting that. Like you said very well, the feeding on all manner of our sexual energy, regardless of gender. And the way, like what we began with, which was how this is all front and center. Like porn is all over the internet. I had no idea, and I probably still I don't look at porn, so I don't, I probably would be shocked at really the breadth and depth of what is actually available. But I know with a few clicks, you're on porn. It's so easy. Like my date, the guy, the porn addict here, he said it began with the proliferation of pornography on the internet. This is, an era through which, and the child porn issue, dark web, get on the dark web, pictures of children and buying pictures of children, or hooking up with a kid to rape the child or so. We both know, and your audience knows, that human sexual energy is our greatest power, along with our heart. That's the pure raw life force energy, right? So I guess we're going into your next question in a way, is like, why were the programs, like, if anybody's listened to my story, it's some of the most gnarly sexual abuse you can imagine. And such is the case with the events that my godfather took me to. This is I think it's really part of the programs. I mean, during those events, I was being groomed psychologically to then become more complacent to what would happen later on, to get me into the SSP and all of that, all the trauma-based mind control, because we were drugged and we were raped in, orally, vaginally, and anally, in ways that are extremely deviant. I mean, very, very deviant. It's not normal, normal sex. So, the SSP handlers, the people controlling those systems, all of that, they know that our energy is so, that energy, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your channel, it's so precious, it's so innocent, it's so pure, it's so connected to source. It's the complete battery for everything that's going on here. It's raw creative energy. It's everything. And once you abuse a child, the child will be, until the child is able to heal, or if the child is able to heal, be cut off from your own life force energy. In the case of sodomy, again, your audience might know this, but why do they choose, excuse me, we're going graphic here, about the anus over the vagina, excuse me, but it's because at the base of the spine is this ganglia of nerves. If you're using sodomy, you can then divert those two channels, the Ida and the Pingala, that run sort of like a DNA spiral around the Sushumna Nadi, the central channel of life, really through the body, can be co-opted and fed upon and fed upon and fed upon. And you've seen this probably in your own client sessions, where, you know, there's so much, it's almost like the root chakra or the sacral chakra can become almost a gateway to dark energies. And they come in and they feed and they feed and they feed over years. I mean, I'm sure you could speak, you want to say anything to that, Alisha?
I think just the one thing that comes to mind was the first time, because I'm very sensitive. So when I do sessions, I actually feel in people's bodies where the distortion is in my
Yes.
physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I did well, my work's for around counterparts, and I see this so prevalent in twin dynamics or counterparts, however you want to put it, is that there is a lot of sexual distortion, because when they come together to connect in their sexual energy, it's like a double power battery, right? If it's in its purest essence. And that's the part that I've seen has been so hijacked. And I was doing a session for a counterpart, clients, male and female, and I picked up sexual abuse around sodomy, and I actually felt it in my body. And that for me was like, that was like a whole level of what I like dealing with, because I actually could, by proxy, I don't know how you even say that.
Yeah. Just by proxy. Absolutely.
My body by proxy felt the not the trauma itself, but the energy that was placed in there from that trauma that client endured.
Yeah.
And I just and knowing the backstory, or being able to cyclically tune into what was necessary to help me clean up the energy.
Yeah.
It was not just a one-off. It was like a gateway that was a repetitious, continual abuse that then shuts down. And I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people can see that in someone that they love, or in society in general, like lights on, no one's home. Like, just there's no consciousness or life force in the person, because they've just been depleted and siphoned from all there. And
yeah. And well, so too, and thanks for sharing it like that. I mean, I think, like I said, I think we see really similar things in our clients, and it can be tricky if, you know, a lot of really difficult traumatic memory can be wiped out, or through the natural biological response to trauma, in which memory is fragmented and somewhat forgotten through the subconscious mind. They don't actually know that they have sexual abuse, and that's becomes dicey for us as practitioners, I think, sometimes.
Because I personally, it's like this, you could feel it or sense it, and you're also aware that the person doesn't even know, like, consciously, like it, because so it's like I had a question and I've just kind of blanked, so obviously
that's okay. Yeah. Should I give you a moment? It'll come up, won't it?
Yeah, it'll come
I mean,
up.
there's so many things. There's so many all these little pieces and parts are a constellation of the larger, much larger picture, and they're all connected. They're all very connected. So with the program stuff, I mean, I'm thinking, where to even start with that?
I have a question before you go into that, because you were talking about the abuse that you endured as a child, and how I can't remember the word you used, but pervasive. I think you used the word pervasive. But where that energy was going, is that part of like the ritualistic? Are we talking like satanic ritual, greater entities feeding off that energy during those acts? Just, I mean,
Yes,
this is dark for people, but I think when you can have more information of the greater awareness.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It is, firsthand experience with that, to be honest. Yes, it is entities feeding and the entities are kind of handmaidens to the larger, much more powerful, how do you say, bigger, in this case, like dark reptilian forms that are running it. The entities are kind of the intermediaries. as
Yeah.
is one way that I've seen it and understand it, and that I experienced it. So the entities continue to feed and siphon energy, and it's almost like it's feeding a darker, like if you imagine like a pyramid with a, the darkest lords at the top, and then like feeder energies below that, and then like the humans, and then there's a bit of structure, and it's very, I would say, nothing about it, at least in my experience within the programs and in my own family, was messy. It's all very precise. It's been developed over thousands of years. It's darkly elegant in a really sick way. I could say it like that. I mean, it's orchestrated in a way that's well thought out. They know what they're doing. Nothing is wasted. They're going to get what they need. And, the control of humanity, human energy, human sexual energy, human life force energy, human creative energy is all kind of the point. That's the one of the goals. Yeah.
And would you say also it's a disconnection to our emotions? Like,
Yeah. I mean, yes, in so many ways, yes.
or distorting emotions, perhaps, is a better.
Distorting, because I'm thinking I've just flashed on all of so if you've been through sexual abuse of any kind, doesn't have to be hideous and horrible and like off the charts terrible. It's all pretty off the charts terrible in a way. You develop a mind state in which, especially as a child, like for me as a child, I felt like everything was my fault. I was bad, so they did this to me. I am worthless. I'm a piece of trash. I'll never be anything but a piece of trash. Those kind of negative belief systems really bloom and blossom in the lower two energy centers. And if we are allowing ourselves to run those programs, because they're subconscious programs, we don't realize they're there until we like have some waking up and, deep shadow work we're doing. Those will dictate our emotional state. So the belief dictates our thoughts, which dictate emotion, which dictate behavior, and that's also that componentry of that system, or looking at that structure is also part of the healing journey. But yes, like you said, to answer your question around that, the emotional content of our lives can be it's like, it's so, we're being jerked around like, little puppets on strings through all this manipulation in the various forms it comes to us in. So
How do you feel that connects, or can you speak to like that whole cultural thing about men don't cry or men don't?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that hurts my heart. Like, I just feel like, oh, yeah. So, um, actually, I just flashed on a beautiful, like, I see a lot of male clients. Probably half my clientele are men, and they're doing beautiful work. And I have had they're having huge breakthroughs. I want to say that is a favorable note as we're going through all this, like taking a shovel and going through all this really dark stuff. We'll get to the light parts too, but yeah, of course, that's part of the picture of men being cut off from their hearts, or not allowed. Let me say it a different way, because I'm not trying to make blanket statements about every male in the audience here, or any, whatever, the whole male gender, but the way the feminine is not allowed to be brought into the masculine, or the disconnect between masculine and feminine energies, the distortions, the inversions there, that are part of all of this. And I think that plays into the emotional landscape of both men and women. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah. It's a big journey. I can see in my male friends, male family, the culture, it's like, we're all trained to hold it in, put a brave face on. And I know in the early days of starting to talk about this stuff online, through my videos, through my YouTube channel, I'd have like complete meltdowns, and I'd have other experiences where I was just like trying to keep it together and not like get emotional, because it's so big, but even, just keeping it in the conventional realm of how we move through the world, as we're emotional creatures. And the full range of that is part of our inheritance,
Yeah, and I've always felt like, I mean, as a child, I was picked on and ridiculed because I was so unregulated in my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I always thought that was a weakness of mine because I was so emotional. But as I've healed a lot, I realize it's actually my superpower because it's emotion that generates
Yeah.
creative life force energy. It's my emotion is that what drives me and sparks passion, and I drive into my creative projects, and it can be used as a tool of manifestation when it's in um, alignment and resonance and it's in a clear channel. But when it's distorted human emotion, that's where we are kind of using our co-creative life force energy to create destructive patterns. And that
Yeah.
was something that I kind of realized about myself throughout my own process and journey. And I also want to speak to the leaps that I've witnessed in my male clients and males around me. Like, oh my goodness, like my heart is full to watch and witness the breakthroughs and how they're like ready and willing to like step into their greatness and their power and be vulnerable, right? But
Oh, yeah,
however,
that's a key. It's such a key word. Thank you for all of us. It's such a key word. Like we've been so trained to to be invulnerable, and we can't have intimate relationships. We can't have true connection without vulnerability. They don't go hand in hand. We can't have true communication without vulnerability. Truly, yeah. So yeah, there's so much here. There's so many. I feel like we're like scratching the surface of these topics that are so rich and deep and fecund in a
I'm
way.
I'm witnessing prominent males in my life get reconnected to their creative outlets.
Mm.
And I'm like my eyes light up. I'm like, oh, like, getting back to painting or drawing or singing or like, whatever that thing is, everyone has a creative outlet. But
Mhm.
watching them kind of go through that breakthrough and then wanting to engage in like create a home, like, this is the magic. This is where the magic is.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, and that's inspiring to people who are watching, and no matter how I don't know, dark or hopeless this stuff can feel, or maybe on a personal journey that feels maybe overwhelming. I know I have a lot of clients like that who it's very lonely, it's, et cetera, et cetera. But there's, like I said at the beginning, like no one is beyond redemption, and we are all resourced as humans for this journey. Yeah.
Shall we can you speak more to like the programs and how?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So, oh gosh. Um, I remember, and we were talking before we started to record, like I was saying to you, Alisha, that most of the mind control for me, like the way they fragmented me and really destroyed my relationship with myself and made me ultimately into a weaponized asset, what's often called a super soldier. I mean, a combat slave really was through sexual abuse, extreme sexual abuse, and the co-opting of the life force energy that happens there, sexually and creatively. And I think what I just said there about the authentic, like the connection to self is severed. And so we become completely controllable slaves. And that just made me think of, yeah. And if that's happening, they perfected that in the programs, they can create a slave race here on Earth through all these mechanisms that we're talking about. But a lot of I'm trying to go back to the beginning point of all of this in my own personal journey, my own story, my own early life. And some of that it begins in my natal family, my mother's side of the family, which had ritual abuse going on through a German bloodline, and a lot of darkness there, which I've been a long journey of I want to say, call it as like seeding light back into that system. And also what I spoke of with my godfather, the deep state pornography, child porn events. That's a really sanitized word for them. And then, all the prepping for Mars, in which I was, we get into the twinning and what happened with Dean and I at the Navy base north of Chicago, where we were kept in cages. We were sexually mated when we were 9 years old. And there was a lot of sexual abuse that happened there. And later on, he'd be forced to abuse me sexually on Mars, and while we were still little on Mars, or excuse me, at the base north of Chicago, Great Lakes Naval Station. The sexual abuse was part of that, or we'd have to be forced to witness. I would witness Dean being sexually abused, or he would by one of the handlers, or likewise, he would witness me being abused by someone else who was, you know, just they were destroying us in a way, grooming us. And or we would be made to feel responsible for the other, their abuse was our fault, and all the mind control programming that goes on within the twinning program and beyond the twinning programs. You don't have to be twinned to be, you know, subjected to this really devious and really savage abuse. So you can see the programs in the mind that they're creating, like, you know, I'm using the twinning as an example, but it's all going back into those root subconscious belief systems that are very well programmed to our very neuroplastic, you know, brain. The brain is plastic and will start to believe certain things that aren't true. That is programming. Yeah. So the abuse with Dean and I, and the sexual component continued on Mars. And while we were aged in our 20s at that point and completely devoted to each other, but then it was a love-hate relationship. So I didn't know we were going to start talking about twinning in the show, but it occurs to me that's very pertinent because we're talking about human relationship, which is one of the most precious things we have. You know, now I'm a woman in my 50s, and I'm kind of like aware of time ticking, and like I kind of go, there's this little voice in the background throughout the, you know, at odd times throughout as the days go by, like, what is the most important thing for me to be accomplishing now? And it's really love and true intimacy and connection on a variety of levels in my life. That is the true work of being human. And maybe at the root level is that what this is all about is keeping us from love, you know, keeping us from love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation with someone reflecting on a lot of my own soul's journey of this love triangle, this handler dynamic, this betrayal, the love, you know, like what did you call it when we were talking about my book, The Crucible or something?
Oh, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. It just like this blood bath devastation of love and human connection and how it's been torn apart so precisely and so specifically.
Yeah.
Because love is the most powerful force that we have. And the connection between two souls that share a similar frequency. And I said in this conversation just very, very recently, like, when you have a connection like that and you feel it, it's terrifying. Because when you feel a connection like that, there's two things that go off in your head, depending on where you're at. It's like love like that can completely break you and destroy you, or it can bring out the most expanded version of you and bring you to your greatest heights. And most times it's probably going to do both.
I think probably both, you know. I mean, without, yeah, maybe it is the word crucible again comes to mind, the crucible of that dynamic. Like we need the other to help us see ourselves. Like, you know, the journey is truncated if, like, for me, I've been solo I've been like, in response to all the abuse that I suffered, I became this like hyper individualist, very, you know, I've got a friend who's also on this sort of interview circuit that's close to me. And he says, Rebecca, you're the most independent person that I have ever met in my life. You are so resilient and you don't rely on anybody and you never need help. You know, slowly that like sort of concrete structure around me is softened. But yeah, like we need the other, we need each other and to do the journey in company. I mean, and I would also say it's beyond, it's not just speaking of the romantic aspect, but also just our friendships, our family, our pets, the availability of the heart is like so like what you said to vulnerability earlier. That's where we learn to become vulnerable, first with ourselves, to kind of move into a feeling state rather than a thinking state, and to extend what I would call, and something I've worked with a lot, is like a compassion first with the self, compassion toward myself, like in how I've worked with all my inner child parts and become like the reparented them and brought them back in a kind of soul retrieval work. There's a lot of deep self-compassion that is involved there. And then then extending that to others. I know my clients feel that. They love the soft energy and the welcoming energy that pervades those sessions, but it's a gentleness that can be extended to the wider world. It is, I think, part of the loving heart and the awake heart. Yeah. And that's such a big part of, I feel like it's just such a big part of our healing on this earth. And I'm aware that as I'm speaking about it, I lack linear words, English, to express all of this, because it's so much bigger. It comes through light language, it comes through energy, but it's going to be truncated in its expression through 3D language, which is too small. We need the 5D language to contain that and set it free.
Felt it.
Yeah. 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 It's big, but it's what we're built for. Again, I like kind of come back to that, like we're made for this and all of this. Like we have so much in us. And I think too, with what I was saying about like, I'm aware I'm aging and what am I doing here? It's like to reach as deeply into and express as fully as able my own human potential, which is very connected to the realm above in the stars, to the divine and to our galactic inheritance as well. That merging of the galactic with the human, and maybe that's again pointing at the fifth dimension and higher dimensions, higher dimensional energies. Yeah.
So how, I guess the question that I have for you that might be helpful for people watching is like how you've gone through some radical transformation within your relationship to self, your inner child components, the soul retrieval, like nurturing and healing that child who was victimized in those horrific ways. And I know this has been such a long journey for you, and I like you're probably one of the people that I admire the most on this planet for the journey that you've been through and the healing work that you've done and how you hold space for people like myself.
Thank you.
How has that changed as you've evolved the relationship and the richness, or how have you noticed as you've created changes within yourself, it's changed your personal relationships in your life?
Oh yeah. Everything softens. Everything is softened. I mean, I'm not perfect, I can have a wrathful side. I think that's part of also being human and balanced, but everything is softened in my relationships. And it's fair enough, it's a work in progress. I have had a really steep healing curve over the past years, like running alongside a moving vehicle with everything. Yeah. I'm just feeling into everything you just said. And I like to say that I'm a work in progress. Like I still have had to work a lot with relational healing. And I got really, from talking to me personally, that I've been really into attachment theory and attachment healing, like healing the attachment system, which for me and so many of us, when we don't receive what we need from our caregivers, who maybe were doing the best that they could, we bring kind of that trauma comes up in how we attach to people. And sometimes we can't, we avoid attachment, or we're anxiously always seeking it out and afraid of losing it, and all the abandonment trauma. So I've had to look and this is nitty gritty shadow work, like this is human sized kind of stuff that I've also been through. So and I know too, my journey doesn't necessarily, everybody's healing journey with all this will be unique.
Yeah.
And it's very there's no, I want to say, like there's no exact template that works for everyone, although pieces and parts will be probably applicable to many, right? So I mean, for me, there was just so much work to do in an ongoing way with the natal family stuff, and my all the program stuff was so connected to my mother, my father, my godfather, extended family. It wasn't like they whisked me away randomly at age 9 and that was that. There's all this, like for me, there's family stuff, which can be the toughest stuff.
I mean, ancestral, maternal, paternal lineages, like right, like here in my field around my own stuff and everyone, like it's hot.
Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah.
like how far back have
Yeah.
you been out to trace? Like, I have my own theories around this, but I'm curious, like, with your journey, how far back does the program, the the ritual abuse, like, have you been able to track
Yeah,
that?
it's about
Yeah.
6 generations back on my mother's side. She's purely German. I mean, she wasn't born in Germany. She was born in New England. I grew up in New England, where there's, if you know, people are familiar with New England. There's a lot of, that's where the witch burnings were and everything, not far from where I grew up.
Jeez.
Yeah, and back in the 1600s. So, yeah, there's a lot of weird energy around New England. And wow, I'm glad I got out of that family in a way. I mean, we're still always connected to our natal families over many lifetimes. But what I discovered too, and also shifting the DNA, there was dark reptilian, you know, energy bloodline, and shifting that, which was like really amazing. I was like, I think people who know my story be familiar
Mm.
with this, but in a nutshell, is really shifting that darkness into light, almost being, how do you say, being adopted into it's like a Lyran dragon energy, or white dragon benevolent energy, like, and it fed, and this was not something I did consciously. I was like, I had to ask, my team, like, what even just happened? I have no idea. Like, you change your DNA, and it was like backfed into the lineage. And one other thing that's come up for me, and this is more recent, as being my birth mother abused me in hideous ways that are really hard for me to even, like, they don't need to be verbalized. They're so dark. She'd be in prison and I would have been taken into foster care. It's that kind of abuse. And like, forgiving her has been a more recent thing. It's like, I haven't seen her in over 10 years. And I think I've been, just had a really hard time with that piece, and working with that to liberate myself, especially, and also to see, because she's a dual, she has a dissociative identity disorder, that was very much running, this reptilian energy that was running her when she'd be abusing me as a kid, that I recognize, isn't necessarily her. And these energies, because she hasn't done any healing work, are still around her. And I think it's, a lot of your viewers will understand, not, maybe choosing to opt out of some relationship with a family member, because it's so toxic, it's so poisonous. But I wanted to just say that the energy of whatever the opposite of forgiveness is, like not forgiving and holding this grudge or this dark energy in my heart kind of toward her, liberating that has also helped to liberate the bloodline. Like, I'm not keeping this sort of, how do I call it? It's not quite retribution energy, but just like the hardness toward her, like, has liberated any vestiges of any like dark energy that feeds on emotional stuff, right? Pain.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so much richness in that.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like, because our maternal, is like the woman who brought us in whose womb we live for 9 months. This is also relevant to the programs. If they can, I always describe my mother and father as breeders for program children. My brother was also in the programs. Yeah. And when they can find a mother that's going to be traumatizing to her children starting in utero, because she's traumatized, she's a wounded soul, it'll produce the perfect kids. Yeah. Yeah, highly dissociative children who, like I said earlier, have no sense of self, no self-authority. They will give themselves to others, always looking for external commands to tell them who they are, what to do, how to be, how to feel, how to perform, what to believe, and so on down the line. Like, those are perfect program kids, especially when they have psi abilities. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really interesting to talk about all of this again after like a while. I stopped doing interviews over the summer and coming back around into it, but to this is drawing upon so many pieces of the story for me, and it's all so relevant. It can be a little like mind blowing to give voice to so many different pieces. And I'm sitting here going like, hey, good job. You came in with a big mission, and you're, I think you're doing pretty well, even though I always call myself a work in progress.
Can we speak to that aspect? Like, I have a lot of questions for him, but can we speak to the higher aspect of you that like chose and wrote the script and chose to come in on that bloodline and like
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think sometimes, at least in the early days of me talking about this, when I would get into that aspect of like, look, I chose this, there's no victimhood here ultimately, in a way that's beyond third density. Or do the perspective. So sorry, I'm all over the place here. I read in the Akashic records, and that has been indispensable for me to understand the breadth and depth of this from a soul's perspective across many incarnations and through this lifetime. Like, oh, wait, I wanted to understand this from the inside out. And so I needed to pick the most like deranged circumstances to come into. And I did. But without this, maybe because, I've got some karma I'm trying to sort out, or I'm just stubborn, or like a hard journey. I am that. I don't think I could have stepped into my own light, as we say, or my own power, my own abilities fully, and to reclaim the abilities that were used in the programs, the psi abilities particularly. I couldn't have stepped into that without facing this and having it be like a ripple effect, or we could say domino effect, of me reclaiming everything. A journey again that's ongoing, that will, feed me for a lifetime. But I needed these pieces. This is my perception. I needed these pieces to do the job here in the Matrix, to accomplish this, to begin speaking about it publicly, to be in my own small way, part of the undoing of this matrix and this inverted system. I needed all of this. So it's not, I don't look back at it with a long face and go, oh, I wish I could have had a different journey. Like, no, this is the one I signed up for, and it's been pretty magnificent. Yeah. And it's allowed me, when you think about this, like, without being able to, or having faced all these, quite literally, the demons and the dark demons, working with this so directly and in such a self-compassionate way has really fed my ability to work with others, or I couldn't do the work I do with other people without having done my own work. For me, it couldn't work any other way. Yeah, I mean, does that make sense to you?
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And I always joke with myself because like you, I'm stubborn. I have my blind spots. I'm not perfect. I get riled up. I get triggered. But when I hit that peak, I'm like, oh, I got it. Like, I understand it all. I clock myself and go, oh, Alisha, you're just about to go through a huge learning curve when you think you hit that peak. Then, I mean, and that was for me, like, when I connected with you, was like, I went through this incredibly intense journey that I have most of my life. And then I was like, okay, well, what's next? And then obviously the SSP stuff just ripped me apart. And I went, oh my God, I've really lost it now. Like, I'm having these visions, these experiences,
Yeah.
and then finding you, I mean, we can leave that, but like, all right.
Hmm.
3 pieces, actually. I want to talk a little bit more in detail around the program, because I think you hold more information than what I do. I want to talk about you being the most fiercely independent person and how your journey with softening to allow others in and to become a team and perhaps partner or be in a group, and I also want to talk about the bigger, wider cosmic perspective of coming full circle around sexual distortion. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Um, wait, what was the first part?
The when I think we when we talk, like there's this big
There's
energy.
this big energy like around this today. It's like a little bit.
I think I'm gonna like fly out of my body if I don't contain it. No, the programs, like I know if people haven't, if this is the first time watching Rebecca, Rebecca and I have done several interviews talking about her entire story, and obviously she has her own YouTube channel. So when please, if it sparks something, go and like
Yeah.
digest that
Mhm.
information. But however, my language, I'm being put up in my language. From being traumatized as a child, can you just talk about that piece of how it went from child pornography into the programs?
Yeah, yeah.
Make that link.
Yeah, for me, and at least how I understand it and how it looks to me psychically, is that it's a grooming process for the mind and for the child to give up her power. For me to be used to other people handling me and allowing them to do their bidding with not just my mind, but my body. To dissociate and go elsewhere when something else is happening to me physically, whatever kind of abuse is happening, I'm just going to check out, or kind of go ragdoll and, you know, I'm not home. Like you said, what'd you say earlier? The words about they're walking around, but there's nobody home.
Mm.
That was like my childhood. Just I'm just taking orders. I'm just seeing what is needed by the situation so I can feel safe and survive. I'm just trying to survive. And as I say to clients in session, if they are presenting with belief systems from childhood that aren't really serving them, it's like we will make a deal with the devil in order to survive anything in childhood. We will, and it'll carry us through the problem through adulthood when it's not good for us anymore. The threat is gone, but we're still kind of living in that traumatized field of energy. So there was that. And also because, so Mr. E, as I call him, my godfather, was involved in the deep state, and he had a lot to do with me ending up in Montauk. So there's a direct link there. I mean, my brother confirmed this. He said, his name, Mr. E, had a private plane and you went places with him. And I'm like, what? I don't remember that. Like, I remember going places with him in a car and him taking photos of me, and there, the whole, okay, this is leading to other things, not him just taking pictures of me, but there's a whole setup. It's very sophisticated. This is pornography, and there's other kids, and there's a bunch of men, and at times a child will be killed in this situation. That's heavy blackmail at the deepest, darkest level. Pause with that. Hold some light around that. Yeah. And I think that with that, watching, again, we're going dark and gritty here, very bluntly, watching a child be murdered and surviving that, I do carry some survivor's guilt. And I know that it has catalyzed me to talk more, like, very bluntly about these things, because I survived and that kid didn't, and that's hardcore. People don't think about, pornography involving a child being murdered, being sexualized and filmed in that way. I'm sorry if this is disturbing to people, but it's what has gone on. And this was back in the 70s. So again, holding some light around that in her life and her death, because this is happening still around our world. But anyway, the link between, I think it's clear and clear. I was going places with him, and he was vetted by the deep state to work for Lockheed straight out of the Air Force. So he was already, connected with all of this. And the German link has always kind of stood out in my mind as well. So there's some direct and also indirect links. It's multifaceted there. And also we could look at the soul's plan to, experience many layers of, not just like a little piece of this, but like the whole banquet, ended up on my lifetime sort of itinerary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was directly into Montauk then.
Yeah. And that was in the late 70s. So I was born in 72, date myself a little bit there. 72, so 78, 79, that era of Montauk, you know, and I feel like there was age regression technology when they put me in the Silver Bullet. That was not just a time travel thing to spy on time, spy on the future. It was also to age regress and to take the body back to its original state. And that would be because a child would be killed in Montauk. Most kids who ended up in Montauk, they didn't live, they died. They were dispensable. You know, they knew they'd just be fodder for to be experimented on until they died. And I'm sorry, yeah, again, we're kind of into the nitty-gritty, but that's the reality. And I think some program kids, you know, they'd be mind controlled, like the Monarch program. You know, you've listened to me on Montauk. We don't have to go into every detail on that, but we were meant to be saved, to be sent into space. Like they weren't going to use us till we die. They were not supposed to kill me, but I didn't know that. Every day at Montauk, you think you're going to die. And that's also a program to create so much terror in the mind that you will just, you'll submit, you'll leave, you'll freeze, you'll never fight. You will, you know, what does that do to somebody? So, yeah. And again, sexual abuse at Montauk. So it's just, I remember when I would be kept in isolation at Montauk, there was this dank, feels like almost like a horse stable where I would be kept in the dark, though. It was like mangy and mucky and wet, and I'd be naked in the dark alone. And it was a program, like programming, conditioning, grooming, so that whenever somebody came in to get me, whether, you know, whatever it was for, I'd be glad to see them, even though I knew it would mean more abuse. And many times it was sexual abuse. So it's just unbelievable. But in this case, I believe that they were regressing my body because, like I said, you can't survive that. Nobody survives Montauk without some kind of intervention for the physical body. They can't just leave you back on your doorstep at your house in New Hampshire and here's your kid back. You know, that doesn't work. So there was some high tech, off-world tech going on inside of that whole story, even though, of course, we were on Earth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No, this has just got my mind just.
No, like going in like, you know, a million directions. Yeah.
So you may not know the answer to this, but when it comes to Dean and the twinning, was he in Montauk too?
No.
No, that was
So no, and that's let me get the timeline sorted on that. So I was around 6, 7 when I was at Montauk, and then I met Dean at the Naval Station Great Lakes, north of Chicago, age 9, right before I turned 10. Yeah, that fall of 82. So just a couple of years later, to my knowledge, you know, I don't have memory of ever seeing him anywhere else, but yeah.
I have so many questions around Dean, and I know we probably don't have time for that, but with the twinning, and the story and the history that's played out between you and Dean here and then Mars and I'm sure Moonbase potentially. I'm trying to formulate a question, but like, do you feel like you have a similar soul energy that you two were chosen to do the twinning because of the psychic, telepathic?
I do. I think they perfected it so they could stick random people together and have a pretty good results because they knew what they were doing. And they weren't, like I said, they weren't sloppy. But I do feel because that we had been earmarked to go into what's called this, you know, super soldier program, I would call it combat slave, that they had handpicked us to end up together for compatibility on a certain level, like you said, largely psychic. Yeah.
Is there any updates with Dean?
Well, there's another place where, you know, being very candid about my own journey, I've kind of like kept it at arm's length because it is really painful. It has been. Less so now, but I don't, there was a time when there was a lot of contact with Dean, and then this sense of the line almost like flatlining. And when I looked at his life, it was like, I'm so busy, like occupying himself with a lot of things, like work, especially. So not able to kind of confront this, or like kind of his journey feels a little bit stalled out, and understandably, it's a lot to hold. Um, and that can happen. Like, so I think that's why I don't feel him quite as closely now. But part of that is me going, okay, I don't know if I want to deal with this. So there's both, there's both things happening.
Yeah.
It's a lot to hold, because it's still like, he's still alive, I'm still alive. This is now. This isn't decades ago. This is now, with people who are 50 years old. Yeah. I think it's hard too, because he's also like, I've done a lot of healing work, and we do unlock each other. So my healing work, or any healing work he does, affects me, but it feels like he's kind of, again, like kind of resisting what's really calling him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like they use love triangles and handlers in the programs, or in the twinning program? Like this whole love, loss, betrayal. Like, what is the bigger picture of purpose? I mean, we may have kind of pointed that out.
I think we might have covered that a
Yeah.
little bit. I mean, it's too, when I think about all the things that happened to me in the programs, okay, I don't know if I can think of all that at once, but like the abuse of my ability to relate from a healthy, functional place for a lot of my life, distorting that and fucking me up in that way is so degraded. It's so inhumane, that can potentially last a lifetime. And that's why it's like, like we're talking about the sexual abuse alone, and then if you add another person in, like you're saying, this triage of love, loss, betrayal, wounding. In my case, I mean, this is again really dark, excuse me, but Dean ended up killing me as part of the twinning program. He killed me as a clone, because they turned on his killer command altar on Mars, and he killed me at point blank range. Like, that is unforgivable in a way. I'm talking about forgiveness, and like, oh my God, how could you? Because it's one of the sacred things, our sexuality, our creativity, our life force energy, and our ability to bond closely and intimately with other people. It's the things that make our lives sing and make us powerful humans. Yeah. And there's a lot to that. It can't, because the once there's a relational conundrum with someone we love, right? There's a collision, there's dissonance. That is also reflected in our relationship with ourselves. It will be reflected, in our dissonance on some level in our relationship with me. What we're seeing out there is part of what's been done in my case in the programs, and with my original family, right, my birth family. So it's just another way that we've been tampered with. Yeah.
It's a lot, and I thank you for being so open and honest, and wearing your heart so openly.
Yeah. Well, I think it's who I've naturally become. It's for me, like, thank you though for that. My voice was shut down for so long, like, I don't know who I am. What do you need? Who can I be for you? How can I fulfill you? Like, codependency on steroids. Like, being able to vocalize in my own words, I'm sure, is because, and from a very, rich, raw and real place, I value that in myself, and that's how I like to show up. Right. So even on interviews, and especially, you and I have a nice rapport. We're friends off camera. It's easy for me to talk to you. Of course, that brings out really good interviews. Right.
Yeah. And I think that the level of relatability that we have, we have some common threads in our stories, It's not all
Yeah.
the same, but there is this interwoven
Hmm.
connection on a soul level, and that's still something that we're exploring too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so Rebecca now is this beautiful woman who's done all this healing and helps people all over the world, who's fiercely independent and can fully
Oh, right.
capable.
That was that the second part? Was that the second part?
Yeah, fully capable woman who can do just about anything. How do you let people back in? Like, how do you go from that to then being
Mhm.
able to create space to share your life?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Carefully. Go about it carefully, cautiously. It's such a balancing act. I think I'm still kind of learning that. And fortunately I read energy, right? So, I can tell, I vet people, I vet people. Is this somebody I want to come closer to, or is this doesn't feel good to me? Like I'm very in tune with, hey, what do my child aspects have to say about this XYZ relationship or whoever's coming in? Even like the guy who I was dating was a porn addict. He had a lot of good stuff. He was doing a lot of shadow work. He's in the Mankind Project, which is really forward for men and like kind of radical for men and male energy on this planet. And he was really into A Course in Miracles, and he was really working on himself. But yet, we're all on a journey. Like nobody has perfection. So this isn't to vilify him either, but just to say, um, I look for certain qualities, right? Are they able to be vulnerable in communication when it counts? Are they able to have empathy? Are they emotionally intelligent? It's a journey. And that's more with the romantic component of my life, but just with people in general, it's gotten easier and easier, right? Like, but I can still be, like my little shadow piece there is probably that I'm not always a great compromiser because I've done so much alone. It's like, my way or the highway, sorry. Um, not entirely, but I could see how that's something that I've also had to work on. Um, yeah. And
I'm giggling because I see that in myself. I'm like,
do you? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so much to this. But really, I mean, my tender heart wants to love others and wants to let people in. And that's also, there's something pragmatic about balancing my time. I mean, and you do too, a lot of people who would like your time. And I can't give to everybody who wants to connect with me through social media or my website or, you know, that kind of thing. And so there's another side that's like, okay, I have to,
yeah.
also know my limits and what I'm humanly capable of and what I'm not.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah,
Yeah, discernment. I think discernment with others and what is their intention. That's another thing for the programs is like, okay, I can't trust anybody because there's betrayal. Everyone has, a dark
mm,
agenda. And it took
mm,
me a while to kind of leave that behind. Like, no, actually people can mean you well, and you have to be able to know who's helpful and who's harmful. You can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah.
thank you for echoing, I think, what many people are currently trying to navigate through for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, the trust issue. So, like, forget the programs, dump the programs. Trust is a big thing for us in this culture because look at we've been, the powers that have been in control of this paradigm for a long time are not trustworthy. Maybe we were raised in a family in which there were things going on that didn't feel good or that didn't feel trustworthy. So we all have trust,
Mm,
some level of that we're asked to kind of look at and to kind
mm,
of discern for ourselves on our own unique path. What does it look like to begin to trust? It's edgy, it's vulnerable, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
What
um
I know we're getting long-winded now, but I do have two more things and then we can like, bring it full circle. What are some of
yeah.
the things that you've seen? Because I know I've seen a lot in terms of people's energy field, especially the sacral area
Hmm.
around either sexual abuse, sex addiction, porn addiction. distortion of sexual energy. Um, is there anything that comes to mind around what that looks like or how that replicates? Or, I mean,
Mhm.
just to start off, like I've seen visions and dreams of people who are close to me who have been potentially violated in some way, or they have distortion within that sacral center, and then how it leaves them open to um, toxic relationships, and the dynamic between relationships and toxicity of how energy can, like, I don't know what the word is, vibrate at the same level.
Yes, yes, I've seen that. Yeah. So you get like they're connecting with somebody else who's similarly kind of maladapted in that area, or like you said, vibing at the same sort of rate, or you know, the harmonic is going to be the same.
Mm.
Yeah. I just see it as, I mean, literally, I see it as dense, dark energy in the field when I look psychically, or I see it, you know, I read through the chakra system in most of my client reading sessions or so. It's just a part of it that gives me the overall signature of what's going on for the client. And it's just like this can look different in different people, but it'll be like tight, or it'll be like kind of dark, or there'll be a little voice coming out of it that says whatever, something giving us information, usually part of the subconscious mind. Or they're you know, you can read too in the sacred, the root chakra, and then up into the solar plexus are also, you know, how are those also being influenced by any kind of distortion through the sacral area. And also for women with the reproductive system, there's a huge connection there. I often read like, oh, have you had trouble with pregnancy or something involved with fertility? Or, you know, you can see that all relevant. And then like a lot of pain through the hips and the low back, like the pelvis being kind of not in a sweet spot, you know. And I've had tons of that throughout my life, and it's finally kind of, you know, eased up a lot. And also what we touched upon previously, I think I mentioned it in relation to the root chakra, but the second center can also be a feeding gateway, or if you've been abused in certain ways, or have used a lot of porn. If you're a porn addict, I see this with porn addicts, and the energy can just be so open that it can't build up. It's like something energy doesn't have quite a container, so it just kind of dribbles out everywhere. And that can be connected to, yeah, a lot of using male ejaculation through porn. Like it's just your energy keeps going out, nothing can build through that center. It's weak, weak, weak. And leading up into distortions through the throat and third eye as well. So, you know, I mean, the porn thing is such a it's such a hot topic on my mind. And you know, I'll just say this briefly. There's a really eye-opening video I saw it on Amazon. It's called 10 Million Throwaways, and it's about the inside of the porn industry. I watched it this summer, and it was a little harrowing to watch, but it showed everything that goes on in the porn industry beyond what the viewer sees as finished product, the many, many hours of basically abuse that are going on behind the scenes. Anyway, that's a little tangent to what you're asking about, but I think that the use of porn very much, we know, affects the second chakra and the connection to the heart, because shutting us down to so
True connection.
yeah, the true connection, the ability to be with a real live woman in human terms, and to feel that exchange of heart energy as well as the sexual energy, which they're wed in this beautiful, like geometric flower-like structure. And that geometry begins to fall apart. So you can also see that I sometimes see geometry through the chakra system and how it's all connected and through the field, and that will show distortions as well. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, that's answering some of your question there.
Perfectly articulated, so poetically almost. I think that where every person, every human on this planet is somewhat impacted by that energy, whether
Yes.
you know, whether it's your storyline where you've had sexual abuse, whether you've been shut down. Like, I think because that's where we're in this matrix system. It's designed to harvest that energy. So just being down here.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Yeah, you don't have to be a porn user or have had sexual abuse to, I mean, think about how I use the word groomed again, you know, from the time we come in, we're being groomed about what it means to be a man or masculine, or what it means to be a woman, feminine, by the culture and the wider world. And how does that also lend to itself to these distortions? Well, oftentimes we're led to believe that we are not enough. I am not enough. I'm not sufficient. Right? Bang on. Right? Like you
Yeah.
just got it. So there's so much, that's a whole nother like thing, right? Like, yeah. So the grooming of our psyche, programming, okay, another word be programming of who we are authentically within our gender, and how we balance the masculine and feminine or express them within us, which can be a little bit of an individual journey. And becoming, I think, part of the healing journey is to become circumspect about our own beliefs and what really works for us and what's true for us and what isn't. Yeah.
So to round it all up and encapsulate it in like one nice sort of package.
Oh, is that possible? I hope it's
No,
possible.
it's not. Every time you say something, I have 25 other questions.
And there's like this mushroom cloud of other stuff going on. I can see it around your head, Alisha. Yeah.
I know.
Me too. I mean, there's so much in here. Like this has part 2 and part 3, you know, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because I've been joking, but in a very serious way, about the cleanup in Hollywood and like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not just Hollywood. It's not just the music industry. It's not just the entertainment industry. It's all the industries, right?
Mm-hmm. It's the world. I mean,
it's the world.
It's the world. Like, let's not put limits on that.
No,
right?
no. But I look at like icons like Michael Jackson, and I look at a lot of, and I look at their ability to bring so much light through their channel, through sound or music, and I look at the level of abuse that they endured in the child, like, and I mean, this is my mind, and I'm constantly going back and forth and analyzing data around this topic. It's so big and it's so important. I think this is the most important conversation we could be having right now, to bring to light for people, because each person addressing this within themselves, to however that looks, each person wanting to go to the depths to bring it back to light, each person who says, I'm going to end this for my ancestral lineage, each person that says, I'm actually going to open my heart to conscious relationship. That's how we change this world.
Thank you for saying that. It's beautifully said. That's a tidy package. I think that's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for part 1, I think we bring it full circle, and I just, my gratitude, my eternal gratitude for you, for your bravery, and to come and speak so open, authentically, and to shed light on such a huge topic. And I just want to thank the viewers for taking this journey with us. And
yes, thank you everybody who's here. Yeah. 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 And yeah, I know we have both, your clients and mine and other people who follow us that are making really brave journeys right now. And hopefully this is inspiring. And there's so much to the healing component of this too. And that's all possible, Yeah.
Are you currently open to working with clients right now? Can people?
Yes, I am. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm taking, yes, taking clients, and my website's linked below. And if you, are new to my story, you can always go to my YouTube channel and check that out as well. And there's some healing content on my channel too.
Yeah, I'll put all the details in the description box below of how you can connect with Rebecca. For myself, I'm still taking a waiting list for clients while I'm in the process of training, 2 training courses. One is elevation training, of basically a lot of what we've spoken about and how you can do it yourself. And the second part is about conscious relationship and how to elevate through conscious soul connections. So if that's inspiring, or you want to be patient with me on my waiting list, all the details will be in the description box below. And I look forward to what this sparks within the individuals. I look forward to the comments, and I look forward to people who might have questions, because I have no doubt that there will be part 2.
Well, and so I've also a little plug for my YouTube channel. My next video, the 18th video in the Bringing Light to the Darkness series on my channel, is going to be deep diving into this too. So we'll have even more there, if that's interesting.
When can we expect?
In the next few weeks, I'll have that out. Yeah.
Awesome. So timely. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for hosting. Yeah.
Please, if this has sparked something and you feel that you need assistance, I can't recommend Rebecca's work high enough. She pulled me out of some very dark places over the last couple of years, and I have a lot of gratitude for you. So thank you. Thank you everyone for watching. Until we get to part 2, just much love and gratitude for wherever you are on your journey right now. And know that whatever you're doing is making a difference to the greater whole of shift of consciousness on this planet. So thank you and goodbye.